Four, three, two, one. We are live. Hello, America. It is Duran Slater from Blexit, Minnesota, here with the famous CC Davis, also from Blexit, Minnesota. We have a star-studded dais today, and I have to tell you, I am elated.
I am so excited.
I know, right? And so, you guys, we're actually going to have the guests to introduce themselves. And we're going to start with Bob, then to Ed, and we're going to go to Richard, then to Mark. So, Bob, tell America a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Ron. Bob Kroll, president of the Police Officers Federation of Minneapolis. I'm a lieutenant in the department, and I've been on close to 32 years.
Woo.
Awesome. And then Ed?
Ed Dion, I'm with the St. Paul Police Department. I'm the vice president of our federation, our union. I've been a police officer for 25 years. I've been on the street all of that time, and I'm extremely close to retirement.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Mr. Rich?
Hi, I'm Rich Walker. I'm 16-year veteran of Minneapolis Police Department. I'm also a director on our federation, Police Officers Federation of Minneapolis, for approximately 5 years now.
Nice. That is awesome. And CC, I'm pretty sure you will agree with me. This gentleman here, Rich, he doesn't look a day over 22 years old. Wow. I mean, as a compliment, Mr. Rich.
I appreciate that.
Okay, then Mark, tell America about yourself.
First of all, thanks for having me, but don't tell me how old I look because I don't want to know what you think.
Yeah, me neither. I'm with you.
Yeah, so we're not going there. Mark Ross, I'm the treasurer of the St. Paul Police Federation. I've been a St. Paul police officer for 19 years, and I'm working patrol on the east side of St. Paul currently, and I'm excited to be on the show with these guys. A lot of experience and leadership in this chat room.
And I think we're all St. Paul natives, correct?
Yeah,
No.
well, Ed?
No, I'm from New York City.
No, that's right. Ed's not.
That's right, Ed. You tell him. You
I'm with
and
Ed.
from New York.
I'm with Ed. I'm from New York, actually. So,
Boo. So, CC, go
yeah.
ahead and take it away, sister.
All right. So I'm just so very excited. So this is fantastic. We have a lot of people tuning in, and so the first thing that comes to mind when I have such an esteemed panel is I want to talk about, because of your all of your positions, I want to talk about the subject of leadership. And if you could actually address how you define leadership, what your role in leadership has been with regard to police officers or being a police officer here in Minnesota, and then how you view leadership right now in Minnesota, and then relate that to the United States. I know that seems pretty loaded, but I believe that'll just flow. Let's start with Mark. We'll go to Rich. We'll then go to Ed, and then Bob.
Well, I guess certainly from a federation standpoint, our membership has leaned on us quite a bit, certainly since the COVID-19 pandemic hit. And again, just in terms of from a police labor standpoint, we started working really hard, trying to make sure our cops had a safe work environment, had enough PPE and all those things. And then on a much more grand scale, obviously, when George Floyd hit, it just kind of shook our profession to the core. And the reality was that no matter where that happened, whether it was in Minneapolis or somewhere else, there was a group of people that were ready to come out and do what they did. And so had it happened in San Antonio, the same reaction would have occurred there, or on the East Coast or on the West Coast. And now our memberships are really looking for leadership because the politicians haven't given it to them. I'll let Rich and Bob talk about what's going on in Minneapolis. I think our chief in St. Paul has done a pretty good job by and large, but he's truly handcuffed by the mayor and the city council. So he's got to be cautious that way. We get zero support from our mayor and city council, regardless of what they say on camera or what they say when they see us in person. So really at every turn, we're undermined by city politics. And so, in terms of leadership for us, our job right now is really to stand up to the mayor and city council to the degree that we can, especially since all this talk has come about regarding defunding police. Again, in St. Paul, we have right now about 625 cops. They want to reduce our numbers to about 590 through both attrition and then not hiring another academy this fall. And if we get down below 6, in fact, right now we're chasing our tails. Our caseloads are so big we can't keep up. Shots fired are off the hook. Homicides are off the hook. Violent crimes in general are off the hook. And so right now, for, again, specifically speaking about leadership, we're out front trying to make sure that we maintain the authorized strength that we have now. In fact, we're encouraging the mayor and city council to hire more cops. So right now, front and center for us is just trying to get the citizens of St. Paul to understand we need to maintain our current strength and actually increase that, to be quite honest, by 50 or 100 cops. And I think we'd actually be able to adequately serve the city.
Perfect. Rich.
Well, I am not a supervisor per se, but I am amongst my peers. I believe that a supervisor or a leader demonstrates the ability to be present not only when everything is going good. It's easy to be focal and easy to be visual, whether you're speaking to the troops or speaking to the media or doing interviews when everything is going good. I think a real leader stands up when everything is not. And my position as a director has been that it's no secret that our department is depleted right now with well over 120, 150 cops who have left in the last 5 months. Our authorized strength is 888, and I believe we're near about 740. LT, correct me if I'm wrong. We've never been this short in my 16 years. I could tell you that openly, we know that our mayor and our city council don't support us. They called for defunding, dismantling, and getting rid of our police department, where our chief has asked for over 400 cops for a few years to implement more staffing levels. And our city council continuously says, now they say they don't want to disfund us, and it was a wrong meeting, but what they want to do is minimize us. And they started early on by reducing our police budget. And even though crime is up, I don't know, 200%, 150% compared to last year, they're still talking about making our department smaller and taking the resources from the police department and putting it into these special interest groups that can try to help curb the violence. It's no secret that crime is out of hand in Minneapolis. And I mimic what St. Paul is saying, where our chief is handicapped by the mayor and the city council. Those guys are not the city council is not leaders. They are elected officials. And I think if you ask anybody in my police department, they would admit that, and they would openly admit that everybody in my department knows that our mayor and our city council does not support our efforts to curb the violence.
Great. Wow. Ed.
Well, I come to the police department I have a military background. I was on active duty for 12 years with the Navy as an enlisted man and as an officer, and I finished with the reserves and retired as a commander. One of the first lessons that you learn in the military, if you're going to lead, is that the leaders eat last. They take care of their troops first. And unfortunately, you don't necessarily see that within the police department. There's a lot of acorn gathering and raking in chips. And that's kind of off-putting. I have only worked patrol. In my 25 years, I chose not to promote. I always felt that I could lead and have more of an influence at the street level. I'm in more contact with the and in the federation, but I'm in contact with more day-to-day officers. Hold on, I got some kind of thing going on here. So so that's my perspective when it comes to the leadership. I think Chief Axel is doing the best he can given the situation that he finds himself in. He's trying to diversify our department, but the mayor doesn't want to hire more cops. Well, how do you diversify a department when you're not allowed to hire diverse people? And he's doing battle, and I got to give him credit for doing that. And as far as the city goes, the mayor and the city council, they have not been friends to the police department, and which means that they're not friends to the people and the citizens of the city of St. Paul. They talk a good game and they say a lot of nice things, but when the rubber meets the road, they're not really taking care of business. I've always felt that instead of less police officers, if you took the pressure off the cops, you would see a different attitude. And I'm not seeing that. I think at the state level, when it comes to, and because you asked us to kind of break it down, and so I'm just kind of moving up the chain of command here. And so at the state level, very disappointed in our elected, the governor. I think he threw us completely under the bus, didn't have all the facts. And it was a shame because I think that led to a lot of the problems that we encountered in May. And as far as the national level goes, I mean, if we're talking about President Trump, he was a businessman. That they lead differently. Businessmen lead differently than military leaders or police leaders. That's a function of what they do for a living. They're kind of dog eat dog and kind of tough guys, and I think that he's doing, probably doing the best he can with the knowledge that he has, with the training and experience that he has. I think that he believes he's doing the right thing. Whether we'll let history judge that later on. But as far as leadership, I mean, that's my kind of take on it.
Okay, and before we go to Bob, thanks, Ed. Hey, Ed, I think your mic is brushing up against your shirt or something like that.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Yeah. All right. How's that?
I thought it was my mic. That's why I was adjusting my phone.
Okay.
Got you.
Sorry.
No. You're good. You're good. Okay, and Bob, we'll go to Bob.
I agree with everything that was said from the guys in front of me. Like Ed, I was Army. I was Army Reserve for 21 years. I retired out of there as a sergeant first class, and unlike some of the other guys, I was promoted throughout my time. I've been a lieutenant for 13 years. Prior to that, I was a sergeant for 12, and I was on a SWAT team. I was a SWAT supervisor. But I think you got to lead by example. And like Rich said, in good times and bad times, and like Ed said, you eat last. You make sure your troops are taken care of. And I think both of our cities are suffering from a lack of leadership, not just within the command staff. More importantly, our political leaders in both cities. That is where our chief is hamstrung. He gets beat up by the city council. That we've got a city council in Minneapolis that they've elected. Nothing but as a pack of activists, and they don't have any life experience, work experience, leadership experience, and they're in a position now where they figure their only job is to micromanage a police department. And for us, Rich was spot on about the numbers. I counted them Friday, and we were down. When you count the people pending personnel leaves leaving the department, we're down to 733. And this time last year, we were close to 900, and the chief asked the mayor and council for 400 more over a 5-year period, which would have brought us up to around 1,300, and instead we're the other direction. By the end of this mass exodus, it's going to be a 600 officer swing in the wrong direction. He wanted 400 more, we're going to end up with 200 less, and that simply is a lack of leadership. And just to touch on how it was the George Floyd incident was handled, the politicians, and I'm talking the governor, the commissioner of public safety, the attorney general, state attorney general, the mayor, and the police chief all came out immediately, and after seeing just the cell phone footage, called those officers murderers. And right now there's a short 25-minute documentary out on this that's circulating, and I'll make sure you guys get it. But it's showing a lot of other evidence, and specifically the fentanyl level inside Mr. Floyd. and you can't walk back what's been done. We had, over 500 million in damage and stuff to the city, and 1,500 businesses destroyed, and on and on. And I think everybody needed to be a little bit. I was beat up by saying, "Hey, we need to remain calm and let this investigation take place." And the others were basically condoning the violence that occurred instead of trying to put the brakes on. And I think that was a huge leadership failure throughout the entire state.
That, can you hear me? Is that me? Are we good? Okay. So let me turn this down. Is there feedback? Are you getting feedback?
Yeah, I'm getting a little feedback from you, CC.
Okay, better now?
It's a little bit better.
Can you hear me?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Better? Okay.
Yeah.
So you can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So gentlemen, thank you so much for that. I want to just slide right into this because you're talking about, each one of you talked about actually serving in your duty. And so I want to talk to everybody. I want everyone to hear about what is that mindset when a police officer wakes up in the morning and they put on that uniform and they leave their family and they decide that they're going to go in and perform their duties during that day as a police officer. What is that mindset? Because I think there is a narrative out there that I don't know if I might be dating myself, but there used to be a movie called Police Academy, and Hightower was this overzealous cop who was just looking for a reason to just shoot his gun and blast bullets all over the place. So talk to us about what your mindset is when you're on duty. We'll start with Mark on that.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting question. It sounds cliche, but obviously you want to go out and help people. But it's pretty complex. And I can tell you right now that policing in general has gotten a lot more complex over, I would say, the last 15 or 20 years, specifically the last 5 years. I mean, it has changed so much so fast. Now there's a lot of officers going out and they just don't want to get in trouble. I mean, the amount of scrutiny is unbelievable. It's almost, I hate to use the term unfair, but it's not reasonable in a lot of ways. I mean, we're human beings. You have to keep that in mind. And even well-intentioned, good human beings make mistakes once in a while. And we just get crucified for every little mistake. If you say something that somebody doesn't appreciate, or if you make a minor procedural mistake, people come at you with bolt barrels blasting. In terms of just I'm a patrol officer, and just in terms of the patrol function, I can tell you that the neighborhoods I work in are the neighborhoods that need us the most. Those people still very much appreciate us and want us there. And specifically on the east side, the Black community on the east side, they're happy to have us. So we have a great relationship with the Black community on the east side. If you were to watch the news, you probably wouldn't see that or believe that.
Yeah.
That's the truth. Yeah. So on a day-to-day routine basis, the people that we're serving are very happy that we're out there. They're appreciative. We have a great relationship with the community. You're always worried about your own personal safety, of course. So you always have to be ready for anything that may happen at any given time. And as you saw from the video in Los Angeles County, those cops, who knows what they're doing in their SUV when they're ambushed. But when people talk about things like warrior training, that's the type of mindset that got those true deputies through that situation. So you have got to be prepared for that all the time. Sure. The chance of it happening likely, not very, but it's a possibility, not a probability. And we work in a world of possibilities. So you should always be at a heightened sense of awareness. Yeah. But again, I think working as a patrol cop brings most patrol cops a lot of happiness. When we go out, we solve people's problems, albeit mostly short term, but we try. And it's just become more difficult because of all the external stuff. If we could just go out and police the way we know how to police, we are the professionals, we are the experts, we are the best de-escalators in the world. And people just trusted us to do our jobs and didn't sit there an armchair quarterback, boy, the job would be a lot easier.
Oh, this is so fantastic. Thank you so much for saying. Let's crisscross over to Bob. I love it that you said problem solvers and the best de-escalators, because I believe that. Bob, what's that mindset of the police officer when he leaves that house and he's out on the beat, as they say?
Well, I got to admit, these three other guys are where the rubber meets the road on that. I've been like an administrator myself for the last 5, 6 years. I've been in an office, and even prior to that, my last assignment was in charge of the domestic assault unit for 4.5 years inside an office. So I still, trying to keep up with what's going on out there. And so as far as going out there, like Mark said, sadly, it's came down to let's stay out of trouble and keep our job and not be prosecuted. That's the mentality where to see the swing in over 30 years of this, it used to be when I was a young cop, the monthly stats were put up, and you had pride. You wanted to be the one that had the most citizen contacts. You wanted to be the one that had the most felony arrests every month. You prided yourself on that. And if you were a load or a slug that wasn't carrying their weight, you would get harassed by the cops for screwing off and not doing your job. And we had the old motto: you work hard and you play hard. Now, sadly, hearing from the officers on the street in our department, it's just the mentality of, hey, we don't want to get in trouble, and that's when the bad guys are winning.
Sure.
If you're going out there to just answer your calls and not do any proactive policing, that's why we have shooting increases so much like we have in both of our cities right now, is that proactive stopping people and taking the guns off and taking the bad people with felony warrants off the street is not occurring like it used to. And that's where everyone suffers. And like Mark said, contrary to popular belief, we've got great relationships with the minority communities in the area that we police, because they rely on us and they depend on us. And there's good working relationships, but the media doesn't want you to hear that narrative.
I love it. I love it that you're stating it, that it's being stated today. Rich, we'll go to you. What's that mindset?
Well, I can tell you that cops are under more pressure now than I've ever experienced in my 16, 17 years. I can tell you that cops are confused because nobody signed up for this job and come to work every day and risk their own life and their own family well-being and financial stability for people they don't know, just to be construed as being racist before they even get out the car. I mean, I think it's terrible that our community immediately assumes just because a white officer gets out of the car in a black neighborhood that because he's white, he don't relate or he don't understand the culture, and immediately he's racist. And what's been mimicked terribly with our city leaders is that the police department's the problem, and all that does is make these criminals more emboldened to do what they're doing, because they have no fear of recourse. They have no fear of being held accountable for their actions. I know cops that are, I think this question should be flipped the other way around, and we should be focused on the cops that still come to work every day. I have friends that are quitting almost every day because they just can't take it anymore. It used to be one thing to get in a jam or get in trouble or you might get suspended, or if it was really egregious, you got fired. But now you're going from 0 to 100 real quick. Like they're actively trying to charge a police officer for a crime just so they could say they do it, even before the evidence out. And even as police officers, we are still protected by the Constitution. We should still be held where we're guilty until proven innocent. And it's not that way. And the people that are in charge of the message are the problem. It's amazing to me that our council sits there and wants to defund the police department, disband the police department, and then when their constituents see where they live at, crime is at an all-time high, and people are being murdered at an all-time rate, or shooting victims is extremely out of control, they're wondering where the police are at. Well, you're the ones that are actually wanting to get rid of the police. And police don't mean more minorities or African Americans are going to get hurt. It means that more are going to be saved, because we will be stopping those cars with guns in the car. We will be booking people in jail. I think another part of the aspect that our people are missing is I think the criminal justice system is failing this community, because the people, 5% of the people are committing 90% of the crime. And if people stay in jail and be in jail, I think people wouldn't mind maybe paying a little bit more extra tax money to keep their neighborhood safe so their kids can play at the playground or play, in the community without worrying about stray bullets flying everywhere. I came from the inner city. I understand what it's like before I was a police officer. I had a great relationship with my patrol cops, and the cops are still doing it. Our city council preaches we want more cops to look like the community. We want more cops in the community, but their actions are showing otherwise. They want to get rid of all our whole police department. Now it's coming up to election year and they're facing some heat. Now they're trying to change recourse, but the damage is done. But what they did is they made cops feel like their profession is not safe. We go to work worrying about being killed every day. Now we're worrying about being fired and being able to provide for our family. So what you have the mass exodus of cops going to find other employment where they don't have to worry about that problem. But what we're losing is we're losing the school resource officers. We're losing the PAL officers. We're losing all the community engagement officers who are engaging, making the relationship better. I've tested this before, and I've stated it openly in interviews that we know the silent majority supports us. And like Lieutenant Crow said, they have no problem telling us. But even they are afraid to come out and speak in support of us.
Yes.
Victims. But they can sit back on the sideline and in the bleachers and watch the game. But it's the police officers who come to work. I think we should be focused on the cops that still come to work and want to do the job. I think that they're amazing people. And we can't quit because the climate and politics change. We know what we signed up for. We're not always. I'm hoping that the pendulum starts swinging back towards law enforcement because the people in our community need it, and my family needs it. My family lives in both communities, St. Paul and Minneapolis, and my family's scared of the crime that's in the city. So we just need our leaders held accountable, and they need to stop placing blame on the police department and accept some responsibility. Now, having said that, I would also say that our department is not sin. We protect cops. We don't hire cops. We support our cops, and when we're wrong, we accept some responsibility. But the narrative out there is that cops never get in trouble. That's just not true.
Sure. Awesome. We got some boldness in this conversation today.
Yeah, Rich, let me add to that because Rich, here's the thing, and let me just be candid with you guys. I have to be brutally honest.
Yeah.
One of the things I've noticed it's these disingenuous attitudes towards the facts, but it's also this counterculture where it's now the criminal actually has to be pandered to, and now his opinion is what matters. How he's treated is what matters. It's not about what he did. Why was he engaged in the first place? And why was he insubordinate? Everything is the cop's fault. And I'm just like, what is wrong with these people? Then also another unfair stereotype, or I should say a stigma. And I hate when they say this. Cops just want to wake up every day just to kill a black man. Well, Rich, you shattered that narrative. You're a black police officer. I have seen Antifa. I've seen Black Lives Matter jump into black officers' face and call them racist and their officers. So I'm sorry to digress, but that pisses me off. But Ed, when you wake up in the morning, what's your mind setting as an officer?
I guess that all of us on this panel, I probably have been pushing a squad car longer than most. I stayed in patrol because I love patrol. Because in patrol, you just have such a wide variety of things that you can do on a day-to-day basis. And I was telling somebody recently, in the 25 years I've been a cop, I've never woken up and thought, I don't want to go to work today. I've always wanted to come into work because cops don't come on this job to be the majority of police officers don't come on this job. The vast majority, 99%, to be heavy-handed. They come on the job for honorable reasons because it is an honorable profession that we're in. The reason police officer
about the money.
when I was a kid in New York, I used to walk down the street and the cops would be hanging out with the fire guys and they would be busting each other's chops. And they were always laughing and smoking and joking. I thought, man, what a great job to have.
Yeah.
you go to work, and that's, they're standing out there having coffee and having a good time. And this is back in the late 60s and early 70s when I was a kid in the city. So when I wake up and I come into work, I think, how can I make a difference? One of the questions that we get often are asked is don't you get upset arresting the same people over and over and they get out of jail? You know what? At the end of the day, if I made a difference in somebody's life, a positive difference, whether that's booking somebody in a jail, taking somebody in a domestic violence situation, and removing that person and keeping that woman and those kids safe for that night, that was a success to me. That's as important as me building a house and leaving some kind of, like being a construction worker kind of thing. And the vast majority of cops, feel the same way. They don't come in and onto the job because they want to be John Wayne. They come in, you could ask the rookies, why did you become a cop? All the rookies will say, to a person will say, because I thought I could help, because I want to help. And that's what we want to do. But the way that we're painted, now, does your attitude change the longer you're on the job? Yep. And you got to fight that. You got to actively work against getting tarnished.
I love that.
And then there are ways to do that. And I'm a big advocate. I know Mark knows this about me, but I'm a huge advocate for well-being and mental health well-being and physical fitness. Those are the things that you need to do to maintain that positive attitude. So, I mean, the question was, what do I think? What's my mindset when I get up and I go to work? Number one, I don't think I've ever gone to work and have gone home and not laughed about something.
Sure.
There's always something to laugh about. Somebody always does something or says something to make you laugh. I mean, how many people have a job like that? I mean, we've got a front row seat to the greatest show on earth, I think, and I appreciated all of those years I was able to be there in that front row. So that's my take on it.
Awesome. So what I really love about this conversation is that you guys are just being honest and really candid. Mark spoke about being problem solvers, being the best de-escalators there are in training. Ed, you're talking about that this is an honorable profession. Rich talking about the fact that, you want to serve and you really truly want to help people. At the end of the day, you're like everybody else, where you want to go home at the end of the day, like everyone else. So I want to talk about I want to talk about the subject of racism, since we briefed it a little bit and we talked to Rich about it a little bit. Duran, if you wanted to share a little bit about your background, we're just going to slide right into racism and this whole thing, this whole stereotype and all the stories and the rhetoric and things like that with regard to racism and police officers in the United States.
Lord Jesus, give me the strength to keep my composure about this topic. You guys, there's a duality to this that it takes me off on two levels. As an ex-criminal growing up in a Chicago mafia family, I was indoctrinated. I was told to hate the cops. If the cops ever stop you, it's just because you're black. It's not about intent. It's not about your character. It's just about your color. And that's the reason why the cops are messing with you. Black cops are the worst, and etc. You guys, growing up, becoming a man, and now out and I'm active in the world, and I am a productive member of society, and I believe in basically taking care of your own trash, cleaning up your own side of the street first before you try to go out and proselytize to other people. Now that I am a conservative now, devout Christian man, extremely patriotic. You guys, I have to tell you this. Back when I was younger, and I had this criminal mindset. Each and every time I called the cops, they came.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever I mistreated the cops, they still gave me that respect. I never had a cop try to beat me up unjustly, even when I deserved it. And I was the worst of the worst. Now today, though, you guys, the cops are being attacked. And it's by politicians, it's by our culture, it's by our media. They're labeled racist. They're even considered to be terrorists in certain instances.
Yeah.
And you guys, it ticks me off because we know one day a cop saves more lives than anyone else. Anyone else out of first responders and etc. A cop saves more lives. A cop prevents more crimes. A cop goes out there and they put their lives on the line each and every day. And this part about racism, you guys, when we have politicians who are reinforcing these false narratives, it just ticks me off. And so, Cece, so now that we're getting into this part, we have to start telling the truth. In America, let me tell you the truth. As a black man, I am at 1% of chance of being murdered by a cop. 97% likely to be murdered by a black male. Cops actually end up shooting more whites than blacks. Sad fact. If most of the blacks, when they're pulled over or they have an interaction with a cop, if they are compliant and not insubordinate, they wouldn't be shot in the first place. 99% of these cases, when you do the research, these people have been combatant, not compliant. And we need to start telling the truth. In the black culture, there's a strong criminal element to hate the cops, to fight the cops, to kill the cops if you can. And then also a sad fact, more blacks kill more cops than cops kill blacks. We just have to tell the truth. Cece, go ahead and let's use that as to a segue and let's disperse this amongst our guests here.
Yeah, so what you're talking about is a narrative that is, Candace Owens is saying this loudly. Larry Elder has been saying this. Thomas Sowell has been saying this for a long time. Brandon Tatum has been saying this. And so what you're saying, Duran, is that there needs to be a conversation, an honest conversation within the Black community, and where you need to start talking about what's really going on. Because when you listen to Mark, when you listen to Rich, when you listen to Ed, and when you listen to Bob, they have great relationships in communities of color. They just told us on several occasions. So the narrative is not being reported. We are not being honest. We as Black people aren't being honest. And then we have the media to back us up. So I want to talk to, I just want to talk to the guys right now about their view on racism, or what it has been like for you in your role, and ways, or how it has affected you in your role with regard to racism. Let's just, let's go ahead and start with Rich.
Well, I would say, I would start it off by CC by saying I sit puzzled at my community, and often I ask them when confronted with racism, what do we want? Right. They say we want more people of color in law enforcement. We want more people from community, but our community treats us the worst. I mean, it's all over the news. We're the Uncle Toms. We're the sellouts. We turned our back on the community. These are the same people that are screaming in our face when they have every opportunity to address a heated situation, but they'll get right in the Black man's or Black woman's face and degrade us and try to humiliate us, even spit on us. Our people are from our own community, and they want more people from our community. They say they want it, but they treat us the worst. And I want to touch on what Duran said. The fact of the matter is, it don't matter what race you are. You need to comply. If you complied with simple orders, our officer-involved fatal shootings would be at an all-time low. The fact is, 95% of the outcome of an encounter with a police officer, whether deadly or not, is based on the subject's demeanor and his actions. Nobody wants to come to work. I certainly don't want to come to work and kill nobody's child. I don't want to. I got children. We all have children. Mm-hmm. I don't want to lose my kid to violence, but I don't want to lose my kid to gun violence, period. Mm-hmm. And I think racism, you can't lie and say racism doesn't exist, but it's certainly not to the levels that they're portraying it to be. Cops are not out here violating constitutional rights. We have a system set up to catch these type of people. Before you ever be in Minnesota, before you're ever allowed to be a cop, You have a litany of stuff you have to go through: psychologists, backgrounds, mental health screenings. I mean, they're going to catch this kind of stuff, and it takes 3 to 4 years for anybody to be able to put a uniform on. So I think it's absolutely terrible. I think the media is divide and conquer, and I think our people need to ask if we were really concerned. See, if we were really concerned about what the Black lives, we should be addressing the biggest issue, and that's Black on Black crime, because that is the gaping hole in our community, which is making us lose a lot of our community. And I'm not saying
Amen.
life loss is important, especially at the hands of anybody. But if you're looking for an atrocity, we need to look at how we treat each other, and we need to start there, because that would have the biggest impact. I'm sure you can go to any mom in Chicago that lost a son that would be willing to have that conversation in order to get their son back. And we need to sit back as a people and ask, what do we want?
Yeah.
We want to feel safe. We want to shop and safe. We don't want to go to a mall where there's active shooters. We don't want. I've never, like Duran said, I've never been beat up by I came from Frogtown, St. Paul. I never had the police beat me up. Yeah, I was a mouthy teenager. Most of us growing up were. But life has a way of teaching hard lessons to slow learners, and it will happen. We gotta have self accountability, and then we'll have more responsibility. And we need our community to stop being fed these lies and just taking what is being told to them, and have a rational thought, because the racism is nowhere near. I have not worked with a racist cop. I've been on 17 years. I have not seen something that I was like, yo, that's racist. The system has been set up. We got squad cars, we got audio, we got body cams, we got everything. But unfortunately, America in the mainstream media has you believing when an officer involved shooting is fatal. Just look at the title. Look at the title. White police officer kills Black male.
Sure.
Why can't it be a law enforcement officer killed the suspect? Or whatever the scenario is. It's designed to make you believe that you're being hunted and killed just because of race or your color. And if that is the case, we need to look at why we're killing each other, because that is the gaping problem we have in this country.
Love it. Mark. Wow, Rich. Thank you. Mark.
That's tough to follow.
By the way, listeners, this is going to be a 4-hour show.
Rich is letting it go.
The truth.
I think from the perspective of a white male police officer, I recognize that Rich and my Black colleagues have a really tough job right now, because just like he talked about, he's getting it from the Black community, the white community. People are in their face, calling them Uncle Toms, calling them sellouts. It's a tough spot to be in for them. And these guys take it well because they have great perspective. But Rich touched on a lot of things that I think are really important, specifically to Minnesota. You may or may not know this, but the standards to even become a police officer in the state of Minnesota are much, much higher than a lot of other places in the country. And I can't speak to what the cultures are like in other departments and places where maybe the requirements are much less than what they are for us. But in Minnesota, you have to have a college degree. You have to become post-certified and go through this very specific schooling. You have to get a post license, which means you have to take a test. And then the real work begins, because you fill out a background packet that's about 60 pages, and they go through everything, every single place you've ever lived, every school you've ever gone to. They go and they talk to school counselors, they talk to teachers, they talk to your neighbors. They'll go to your banking and financial institutions, find out if you pay your bills on time. If you are a racist, they will find you out before you even get through the door.
Yeah.
And even if you do make it through all of that, you end up getting a job offer, you take the job offer, and you take the job. Not Bob, not Rich, not Ed, nor myself want to work with anybody that's a racist. All right. First of all, it's not anything that we believe in as human beings. We wouldn't be police officers. And not to mention, we spend the most of our time in communities of color. How could a racist possibly thrive in that environment? Go out and help people of color day after day after day. You know what gets lost in all this, folks? Victimization. Okay. Look at the victims that we're dealing with. People that we're helping are primarily people of color in communities of color. Now, how would a racist possibly survive a career like that? It's not even realistic. So it really, really irritates me. And again, as a white guy, I used to have blonde hair. I've got blue eyes, right? So so the liberals will tell me I either don't have a voice, or the haters will say you can't talk because you've never walked in our shoes. You're privileged. Or if I don't say anything, then I'm complicit and I'm a racist. So personally, I've never met a racist cop either in my 19 years. In fact, I wouldn't tolerate it because it makes the job that much more difficult for all of us. Unfortunately, now the media, white liberals especially, have latched onto this. All right. And they are all over us, and everything is about race. And to be honest, probably makes most of us sick. Like Rich, Bob, I'm an inner city kid. I came up through the public schools. Any school I ever went to, whites were the minorities in terms of there are always a greater number of people of color overall, meaning Black, Asian, Latino, Native, than there were whites. It was never a big deal when I was in high school. We all just got along and did our thing. Unfortunately, now, if you step into a classroom of these schools, it's front and center, and that's the primary topic. We're going to talk about how somebody of color was wronged today for whatever reason. I don't know. And I think that our educational system has gotten completely off the rails. They've been empowered by the media, and I feel bad for these kids because they don't know what to think. They don't know what to think. And so all we can do is go out and work hard, develop positive relationships, and hopefully these kids are independent thinkers and have enough wherewithal to go, wait a minute, they're telling me this in school on the news, but those cops really treated me well. They seem like really normal, good guys and gals. And so this is a topic I could go on and on for hours. I want to hear what Ed and Bob have to say, but you know, Rich is in the thick of it as a black cop. Rich, thanks for doing what you're doing. I know your job is as difficult as it's ever been right now because people are coming at you all the time.
I think it would get better if, I think the main problem is people. I appreciate you. Thank you for saying that. And I actually, to be honest, and Bob knows that this ain't a lie. I've said it and I'll say it again. I actually think white police officers right now have it harder than blacks because you're racist before you even get to the.
So do I.
So
I agree. Good point. Wow.
My mother's white. My father's black. I don't really play the race card. So I don't do it. I think it ain't right. But I think as soon as we could start blaming the individual for what he does, every time a law is broken, they blame society or how it's down instead of blaming generally the adult who knew difference between right and wrong. You do the crime, you got to accept the responsibility, and we need to stop getting. It's just amazing to me how a violent suspect and a cop can have an encounter, and then automatically the villain is the victim and the cop is the suspect. I mean, I don't know what this.
Exactly.
So, Bob, from your position, because you said you're not pushing the patrol car, I would like to hear your take on racism from the administrative side. What is that like? What's that been like? What's been your experience?
I think there's misperceptions. You have a way of getting removed, and I think a lot of our administration has done that. They've got a unit called, oh God, Rich, what I'm blanking now. The procedural justice unit,
Yes,
and then the community engagement team and that type of stuff. And I've got a completely different philosophy on community engagement and things. I don't think that you need a unit of people that need to go out into minority communities and hand out footballs and give out ice cream and pose for pictures. I think those units should be eliminated, and you teach that to every one of your cops, and you give them enough cops to do the job effectively. What you do is you hire people of good character to begin with, and Mark talked about the background process extensiveness. You find the good character in people, you train them to work the way you want them to work, and you allow them the time to make that interaction on every call or in every contact they have an opportunity to do community engagement. It's part of your regular patrol job. And I'm not a big fan of, and I see it differently than our administration, than these units that need to go out and perform that function. I think all the officers should be performing that function of community engagement on every opportunity they have on the street. But they need the time to do it. They can't rush call to call to call to high priority calls and be able to do that. It's a numbers game. But two things I want to talk about on personal. experience is ignorance and hypocrisy. And the ignorance of the people that are carrying out this false narrative, all the racist police officers, by and large, are young white people. Okay, and I'll give you an example because I've had protests at my house. They call me KKK Kroll, the Grand Wizard, blah, you know, on and on, and it's baseless. But the ignorance there, they don't want to let the truth get in the way of a good false narrative. And the hypocrisy. The same people that are doing this are the ones that are going to these defund the police movements where you see the ACAB. All cops are bastards. Okay, take the George Floyd incident. What if it was absolute full out murder by those 4 officers, which I don't agree with? But what if it was? What does that have to do with Rich going to a call? Why should he be treated differently because of the uniform that he's wearing, or Mark? If cops do something wrong, it's a very small percentage of those cops. So why is the same group that is so against stereotyping people okay with stereotyping you if you wear blue? You know, how can that be? And the last example, you know, after the big protest, I was not here when it happened at my house. My family wasn't here. But just a couple of weeks ago, 2 young white girls, must have been 18, 20 years old, come walking down my street with Bob Crow's a racist sign in front of and stopped in front of my driveway. And I was outside working in the yard, and I was going to just leave them, but they said, forget and go in the house. But they stood there. So I went out and I confronted them. I said, do I know you? Have we met? Do you know anything about me? No, but you're racist. And I said, okay. Why don't you talk to Rich Walker? I think he knows me better than it. That doesn't matter. I said, do you realize that most of my career I policed communities of color? Do you realize I got medals from pulling a black man from a burning vehicle right before it exploded? But that makes me a racist. And I don't know, but that doesn't. You're still a racist. And I'm like, who are you hired by? And get out of here. You know what I mean? It's like it's this false narrative that they hang on to and push. But they don't know anything about me. The reality is I grew up in the east side of St. Paul. I was in the military. I went to public schools. I worked diverse areas as my time as a cop, and it's greatly offensive. And I agree with Mark. They're not tolerated on the job, and they make it harder on all of us. But I just don't like them getting away with the false narrative. And quite honestly, it's not the minority communities that are pushing this. It is your white liberals that have had, the cake eater life their whole life and not exposed to anything, but they're supporting this cause for some reason.
And most of them don't even live in the community. They come to preach their hate.
Correct. That's what leaves me in such dismay is how they can push something that they know nothing about. Ignorance, and then again the hypocrisy that it's okay to stereotype, but don't you dare stereotype.
The same peaceful protesters that are taking a picture standing in front of a completely engulfed building on fire, but it was peaceful.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. If you're a liberal, you can burn things down and attack people. Remember, you're not a rioter, you're a protester because you're liberal.
Well, and the last point I'll make is if you're arguing the liberal, and this is where they go after the president, he's got this title of being a racist, and I don't know where it comes from, if there's any factual basis behind it. But when you're having a debate with a liberal and the facts do not line up and they're running out of facts and they're losing the argument, then the old standby is, well, you're a racist. You know?
Absolutely. Every time. Every single time. It's an attack on your character. You're not a good person, or you're unfeeling, or some kind of you're cruel, or you're a racist. Absolutely. Every single time. So, Ed, let's hear about racism.
So, for racism, to me, the word has completely lost its meaning.
Yes.
To me, what racism is when a thought rises to an action. That negative thought works its way into an action, and you dislike someone just based on their religion or their skin tone. You know, that to me is racism. I'm not seeing it within the police department. Have I?
Oh boy.
There you go. He's there.
Yeah. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I have experienced it. When we lived in New York, we moved down to Atlanta, Georgia. I was a young teenager on the basketball team. I took one of my friends to the subdivision swimming pool, and my dad got a phone call that night. And I won't use the guy's name, and I'm sure he's dead now. But and he said, "You tell your son not to bring those people to the swimming pool anymore." And so my dad called me into the kitchen and he said, "Hey, did you and Daryl go to the swimming pool today?" And I said, "Yeah, we did. Did you have any problems with anybody?" I said, "No, sir. We didn't have any problems with anybody there." So he told me about this man making a phone call. So I said to him, "Dad, what do I do?" And he said, "You and Daryl want to go to the swimming pool? You go to the swimming pool." Now, Daryl couldn't swim a lick. So, and I always could.
Oh,
And
that's
so we went almost every single day that summer so I could teach Daryl how to swim. And we had a great time, and there was nothing more said about it. Because my dad, later on in life, told me that the real story. He said to this man, and my dad was a construction worker, so he wasn't a little guy.
Mhm.
And he said, "If you got a problem with what my son's doing or who he's hanging out with, then you come down here and we'll talk about it, man to man." Well, the fella never did come down. So did I experience racism? Yeah, for my friend, because I felt so bad for Daryl. Now, I never told Daryl that story. And he and I are actually still in contact. Even this is probably 40 years later. Still in contact with each other. Last time I was in Georgia, I went and I hung out with him, and still haven't told him the story. So does it exist? Yeah, it exists. But I don't see. So to me, that that was racist, right? So,
Yeah.
and I see that within the police department. I just, it's not in the 25 years that I've been on the job, I'm not seeing it. So, I mean, all the other fellows talked about it. I just wanted to relate, those kind of stories. It's, it's an individual journey as a police officer, and you make the job what you want to make the job. For me, it was the greatest job I've ever had, and the most fun you could get paid for. I always thought. I used to say this when I first came on the job, that I would do it for half the money. Luckily, I didn't have to, but I would have. So I don't see the racism. I don't see systemic racism within the police department. I think we are within communities of color that are asking us to be there. They're calling us into their community. Help us, help us, help us. And oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes, the suspect in that very same community looks like everyone else in that community.
Mm.
And that's what we're dealing with. So I don't want to beat this dead horse here, but
No.
that's where I'm coming from.
So there was a really great question that just came across that said, "We support you. What can we do to support you?" So I want to do a really quick twofold question: is this a racist country? And two, what can the public do to help you and support you in your role? Let's start with Bob.
Is it a racist country? I would say no, but everybody does have their biases, and um, like Ed just said, it's a matter of if you act negatively on them. Is there? I would say no, and I think that it's getting way too much hype. I think just put it aside. People are people, and
Yeah.
we've come too far in this country in recent years to keep harping on this, and that comes from my take from everybody's side of the coin of this thing.
Sure.
I think all races are tired of hearing everything is racism or is a ism, and just
Right.
knock it off and let people be people. So, are we a racist country? Could we get better? Yes. Is it overly racist here? I don't think so.
Okay. How can the community, how can the people, how can citizens support you?
Is that one of me again, Cece?
Yeah. It's a twofold question. My apologies.
Okay.
Yeah.
How can they? You know what?
Vote differently.
Vote differently, yeah, for sure.
Oh,
No, but call people out when they have the opportunity. Ask them for facts. Okay, all
Yeah.
cops are bastards. Why? Tell me why. Have you had an encounter and how do you know all of them? Put people in check. Ask questions.
Yeah.
I love it. Bob's talking about holding people accountable and not accepting the narrative. I love it. Mark, is this a racist country? And then how can citizens support you?
I don't believe for 1 minute that the United States of America is a racist country. Our history is not perfect, but I think we have come a very long way in a short amount of time. If you look at where we were at, and let's say the 40s, 50s, 60s to where we are at today, I think we made a quantum leap. Are there racists in society? Absolutely. It's all of our responsibility to deal with those issues as they arise and take them head on at the time. The United States of America is the greatest country in the world. It's not perfect, but we're striving for perfection, I think, as a country. And I think anybody will tell you, when you strive for perfection, you never get there, but you get excellence. And I do think this is the best country in the world. You find a better one, let me know. Is our system perfect? No, but it's great. And we all, part of why we do what we do is to make this place even better than it already is. Okay. And so, no, I don't believe America's racist. I think it's the greatest country in the world, and I think we're going to continue to get better. As far as supporting cops, I hate to make this political, but it is political, unfortunately, in a lot of ways. And so one of the things people can do is make sure you're staying on your elected officials, whether it's a positive note about what your police department's doing, whether it's your opinion on how your police department should be funded, whether it's your opinion of public safety in your given community. I think you can just make sure you're staying on your elected officials. And then when they do say things that maybe aren't so flattering as it relates to police, you'd also call those people out. But I think the main thing is just the way that you raise your kids. Unfortunately, right now, at every turn, kids are being told that we're not the good guys anymore. Somehow the script got flipped, and now we're the bad guys. And so we are met with resistance by everybody all the time. And Rich spoke about it ad nauseum. Compliancy is key. If people are just compliant and take the time to understand why we're doing what we're doing, everything works out. I wish I could tell you how many times I've had to maybe use a small amount of force and handcuff somebody that turned out not to be a suspect, but everything turned all right because they were compliant. And then afterwards, I offered them explanation as to why I had to do what I did at that time. So I think just, reminding people that, hey, we're the good guys. Be compliant with the police. If you're just compliant, these major issues just never arise. So that's it. The golden rule always applies.
Awesome. I always like to start at the basement and say, we wouldn't have a Ferguson if a crime wasn't committed. We wouldn't have a Floyd if a crime wasn't committed. So if we just get to the point where we're just not committing crimes, a lot of these issues wouldn't even happen.
Cece, let me add to that a little bit too.
Sure.
You know what? It would have been nice too if our active AG would have released those body cam footage from with George Floyd. All of this stuff would have been prevented. So, that's another can of worms. Go ahead.
Ed, is this a racist country? How can citizens support you?
Well, they call our country the American experiment for a reason, because it's not perfect. That's why we can make amendments to the Constitution. Women couldn't vote in the 1800s, couldn't get the vote until about 100 years ago.
Thank you, Republicans.
Then the Civil Rights Vote. I mean, it's an evolving experiment that's happening. And in this day and age, everybody wants everything fast and funny immediately. Well, it doesn't happen. You have to be a student of history. Look at the Byzantines and the Romans and the Greeks and the Assyrians and you have to study that. And so, is it a racist country? No, I would not say that we fall into the racist country category. I think we're tolerant. Was it always that way? My relatives that came from Ireland didn't have an easy time, but they worked hard. They were down in 5 points in the Harlem area, in the beginning, when they first got to the country and moved up to the Bronx, and then they go to Queens, and then they move out to Long Island. I mean, that's kind of the Irish, right? There was the Irish path out of Manhattan. I think it's not so much racist. I think it's just people have a tendency to kind of group together. If you know what I mean. I mean, look at our recent immigrants. We have pockets of, when I talk about the Hmong community to my mother, she has no idea what I'm talking about because there's pockets in California and there's a pocket here in Minnesota, beginning to spread out now. Somalis the same way, and so groups have a tendency to kind of click together until 1 or 2 or 3 generations. And for whatever reason, well, I lost that train of thought. So that's my idea on is it a racist country? What can I think the second question was what can people do to help the police?
Yeah.
I think Mark hit it perfectly. Just to reiterate, if you see that good work, let somebody know about it. If you see that police officer doing good work, and let the mayor, let the city council, let them hear from you. I probably get because I'm a downtown beat officer and I work at night, and I'm going to be conservative. 5 times a night, I have somebody come up to me and say, "I appreciate your service. Thank you for your service." Okay, that's just me, and there's 100 of us working at the time. So if I'm getting 5 and everybody else is getting 5, now we're up to 500. Well, then let's take, if you can extrapolate this out, thousands and thousands of people are thanking us for our service.
Yeah.
So what people need to do is to take some type of action to, let the administration of the city, let them know, that you appreciate us.
Yeah.
So that's my take on it.
That's powerful. Rich?
Well, I would start by saying that I certainly don't believe that the United States is a racist country. And I believe that if everybody thought that, then you should wonder why everybody wants to come here. I mean, they come country trying to get here because they believe in the American dream, and the American dream is not racist in general. It's about taking care of your family, about being able to prosper through generations. And if people really believed this country was racist, they wouldn't try to come here and risk their life to come here in some cases.
Yeah.
But I do say that racism has been a part of our history. I do believe America is progressing forward. I mean, like you said, you mentioned the civil rights movements, the Million Woman March movements, women being able to vote, and African Americans being able to vote. I mean, the fact is Martin Luther King helped push our vision as people forward. I don't believe America's racist. We elected our black president, not only elected him, re-elected him, and he couldn't have done that with just African Americans in this country because our population is so small. I believe that we are progressing. I think there could be more progress, and America is evolving, and that comes with education, that comes with the ability, and it also comes with some self-accountability. As far as I believe, as far as how citizens can help, I've actually said this, and I've said it on interviews, and I always say it. I believe they need to stand up. They need to start packing these community meetings and packing these council meetings, and elections have consequences. When these guys are out campaigning, ask them the tough questions, pay attention, and more importantly, get out and vote. Vote because your vote matters. People have died for the right to vote. So we need to stop taking of it and get out here. And if you cared about your community, if you cared about your family, you would take the time to research the people that you're voting, because it's a circle. The citizens are voting the people in the most important positions that are preventing police from protecting them. And if they got the chance to sit back and look at, they majority are the cause of what's going on, because the council is handcuffing the police department that's for trying to protect the citizens. So I believe voting is a key. I believe in being informed when you vote, and it comes down to the basics. Act like a rational adult. Act like your parents raised you. I'm forced to believe that 99% or 95% of children are raised right. I don't think you're born racist. I think it's a taught behavior, and I believe that if you learn to accept some responsibility. You learn to hold yourself accountable. I believe we can break the cycle, and I believe that will turn the tide the way it needs to go.
Wow. Woo! Personal responsibility. Get out and vote. Show up
And
at council.
President is so important. Mr. Trump is so important. That man has been in the public eye for over 30 years. He's never been called racist. He had TV shows. He's been part of wrestling. I mean, you actors and celebrities, but they don't air those guys. You got Shaquille O'Neal. You got Floyd Mayweather. You got Charles Barkley. All these guys who talk about Trump never ever said he was racist. He put more of his own money in the impoverished communities, and you never heard about him being racist until he ran for president. Mind you, that there tells you that America's fed up. They elected a man president who's never held an elected office. He's never been a mayor. He's never been a council member. He's never been a governor. And he came in and he took the election in a landslide, and I believe he's going to do it again.
So do I. Wow.
You know what, you guys, this is one of the things I can say that's truly indicative about the Democratic Party and their ideology. Let's just say the emotional and the mental, or just say psychological manipulation, okay? If they can't get the black community with the victim mentality, they're going to try to get you with the fear mongering. They want you to believe in white supremacy. White supremacy is not a problem in the black community. It isn't. White supremacy is not a problem at all in the United States. Then, if they can't get the whites, you know what? They're going to try to get the whites this way. You have white privilege. You have white guilt. Period. Okay? And I'm so sick. Politics, look, you guys, I'm not going to minimize politics. Politics is a huge part of the problem in the media. And we have to start telling the truth. And I love when Ed said, vote differently. It makes a huge difference. If you want your country to come back to law and order, you're going to vote for Donald Trump. You're going to select Republicans. If you don't want law and order, you want treason, you want sedition, you want people who doesn't have any respect for law and order, who are willing to just be criminals, you want to vote Democrat. That's just the way that it is right now. And we have to call a spade a spade. Screw all this PC crap. We need to start telling the truth. And Rich, the black community needs personal accountability. You have to hold yourself accountable for your failures. Stop blaming the white man. Stop blaming the cops, and etc. And we need to address single parent homes, or just say fatherless homes, black on black crime, high illiteracy rates. We need to talk about the criminal element. We need to talk about this gangster culture that's prevalent in the black community, and etc. When you talk about all those problems, I didn't say white supremacy is a problem. I didn't say the white man is a problem and the cop is a problem. The cop is not the problem. You get rid of the criminal element, that 1% chance that I have of being murdered by a cop goes away. You have to clean up your side of the street. CC, go ahead, CC.
Oh, nothing. I was just going to say, is there, it's such a juicy conversation. Is there anything that the audience is saying, Duran, on your end that we haven't addressed? Or
yes, actually, there is one great point that I did put in the room. Said, okay, I like when this is Ed Parent from Facebook. He said, there's no systematic racism, and it's not even culturally acceptable to be racist. How is this a racist country? So, yeah. Right. I agree with that. I agree with that so much. You know what? I do have a question that I want to present to our guests here. You guys, we are dealing with, let me say it this way. It's a statement and part question. I believe right now this election is probably the most important election in American history. It's going to basically let us know which way America is going to go. Are we going to remain free, or are we going to be just turn completely tyrannical? Do you guys agree with that? And if you agree with that, why? And if you don't, why? Let's start with Rich.
I believe this is certainly the most important election that I can think of in my 38 years. And the reason why I support Trump and I believe he's the way to go is because his staunch support for law enforcement. I mean, that man is. We take it on a local level. Imagine how he's taking it nationally, and he knows that we're the good guys. And when you're in the middle of, it almost feels like a civil war. You got to see who's supporting you, and you got to see who cares. And they don't do that by talking points. They do that by demonstration. Lowest black unemployment rate ever. Historic black colleges financed higher than ever, and he supports law enforcement, which supports the community. And I believe that uh, accepting anything but Mr. Trump it will be devastating to community. It don't matter, black community, white community. I mean, we're all suffering. We're all in this together. So it don't matter
Yeah.
what you are. And I believe right now the left is tolerating. That's why you see these riots under control. What cities are they in? Portland, Seattle, San Francisco, Chicago, Minneapolis. There's only one political party in power. And if you look at that and you could tell which way they're leaning, I mean, their false narratives, they're the ones that control the media, and their peaceful protests cost our state $500 million in damage. I mean, it's either chaos or it's law and order. And I know what side I stand on.
That's right.
Awesome. Let's hear from Ed on that.
Oh, man.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
Yeah, Mark knows. I'm married to an educator, and I have been for 30 years. So this is a point we're not allowed to talk about politics in our house. We forbid it at this point when it comes to Donald Trump. He's got some blemishes. But I think the question was, do you think this is the most important election? I think 1864 was probably the most important in the history of the United States. But I do feel that if we, you see, it's a funny deal. I think if we swing to the left, we're going to go too far left, and that if it stays Republican, then we're just going to have a continuation of the problems that we're having, because I don't think just because he gets elected, the narrative is going to stop. That's the thing that makes me more nervous than anything else. And I'm a cop in downtown St. Paul. I have a 22-year-old daughter that I tell her, don't go to St. Paul, and don't go to Minneapolis. If you're going to go out somewhere, go to the suburbs and meet your friends in the suburbs for dinner or for drinks, but don't do it in the cities. I'm that nervous about it.
Mm-hmm.
Usually it was like, no, Annie, come on down and let's have dinner tonight. And I'm telling her, no, I don't want her coming down because I'm that nervous for her safety. So I think this is an extremely important election. I'll just leave it at that so I can have dinner tonight when I go home.
Not that race matters, but I got two African-American teenage boys who are all into social media and all that pressure. And I mimic what you say. They better not go to Minneapolis, and I only take them to St. Paul to be around our family. Otherwise, find somewhere else to hang out. Because they know that dad is not accepting that.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
Reason.
Mark, let's hear from you on that.
Well, I think, listen, from a law enforcement perspective, and I don't care where people stand personally, that's not my job as a St. Paul Police Federation leader, but I can't imagine too many police officers not voting for Donald Trump, only because he supported law enforcement to such a great degree versus the left that has just been, they've unleashed this attack on us that's like no other. And it's been tough to bear. But I will say that if you look at the big picture and the people that talk about systemic racism and all these racist systems in the United States, if Joe Biden wins this election, in hindsight, it will be the most systemically racist result of all time. And this is why. If they decide they're going to defund police, you're going to reimagine law enforcement, the people that need us the most are going to be those that are dying at the highest rates, rates way higher than they are now. They're already too high. And just mark my words that if the Democrats win this election, it will end up being the most systemically racist election of all time.
Mm. Wow.
Elections have consequences. We got to be informed, and we got.
Yes, they do.
Wow.
Bob.
Well, not only do I agree with the statement, I've been saying the same thing all year, that this is certainly the most important election of my lifetime, because it is simply law and order and the American way of life and America first versus, chaos and anarchy. We look at where all the problems are. Rich touched on this earlier. Every one of these major cities that's having these problems. I can't imagine what it's like to be a cop in Portland right now. They've been in battle for 4 straight months every night, and they've got less cops than we do in Minneapolis for a city that's happy and larger than ours. But all of these places, they've got Democrat-controlled cities, and look at what's going on in them. And you look at the big issues of this, it's defund the police versus defend the police, if you look at the two parties. And the people that don't like Donald Trump, maybe it's his the way style, the way he comes across. They don't know he's mean, he's this or that. It's like, well, I'll take the facts over feelings in this case, and he's got a tremendous amount done putting America first. You don't hear anything about ISIS anymore. Right, our soldiers were under attack all the time from ISIS. The terrorism threat has gone way down. Securing the borders, but for COVID, the economy has never been better. It was out of this world. The unemployment levels have never been better. Hopefully, people that may not like the things that he says, and does he always want to get the last shot in, and can he come off as childish from time to time and rub people the wrong way? Yes, but let's get beyond your feelings of this thing. Think with your wallet, and think with America first and the big picture of what he stands for. The people that don't like Trump, they don't like his attitude, and it's as simple as that. You cannot discredit any of his policies or the way that he's moved this country forward. And if you look at Biden, I mean, he can't even string sentences together. He's got handlers. There's suspicion that he had a mic in his ear during the debate. There was a wire up, and he's constantly listening. And it's like, I mean, he's way up there in age, and I don't know how the polls can have him ahead. Have you listened to either one of them in their platform? It's like people just can't get over their feelings, and they're simply not paying attention. But also the media is lying. Whenever they have them within 10 percentage points, I believe it's going to the Republican, and they've got them in most states much in single digits and in very slim margins, even where they show Biden ahead.
Wow. Okay, so we're getting down to that last little bit of the show here, guys. So there's 3 questions from the audience. So what I want to do then is to just split them up so that each person is able to answer one, and then we can wrap this up. So Duran, do you want to read those 3 questions, assign them to somebody, and then we'll wrap it up. It's so juicy. Talk all day. We have cops talking. Oh my gosh.
I do like this one. I do like this one from East Coast, Toasty Boy on Facebook. How do you convince people that the lamestream media is lying? You know what? I want that one to go to Bob.
Bob, can you answer that in like 60 seconds?
How do you convince them that they're lying? Well, look no further than the last election back when they all projected Hillary Clinton was going to win. Look at all CNN and MSNBC and all of those that were coming unglued. And first of all, there's no way that Trump was going to win. And as the states came in one after one, he seemed to shock everybody. So they're lying. And then they don't want. Let's talk about the flight incident. They don't want to get the facts out there. I was condemned because no one wanted to go into his history. No one wanted to go into prior drug use. None of the media wanted to cover that. They just wanted to go with he's a victim of murder narrative, and that's the end of it, and didn't want to delve in. It used to be that the media's job was to uncover all the facts, and now they want to form an opinion.
Love it. Love it.
So this one is so this you guys is from Todd. Let's direct this one to Ed. How do you get more laws passed to prevent protests in streets?
Well, so this might sound a little weird coming from a police officer, but I was in the Navy for 25 years to protect that right to protest. I've been to protests myself. I firmly believe that we should have that right to protest. What I don't believe in is the violence and the looting and it's free for all, that you can just do whatever you want. If you have a protest, I mean, I lived in Atlanta as a kid, and now they have memorials to MLK down by his old church, Ebenezer Baptist Church, down there in Atlanta, in South Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
And I take my kids there, and I have many books and his speech in my home, and he did it the right way. How did he affect change? He affected change through peaceful protest, because it made the powers that be at the time, were the Democrats, look like thugs. And he did it through peaceful protests. And so I firmly believe that protests should take place in our country when something is completely out of whack. Have no problem with it. But when you're feeding off of a false narrative, which I believe that this is, and I think when the trials take place with the Chauvin and the fellows in Minneapolis, you're gonna begin to see that when the facts come out. The question before was, how do you know that the mainstream media is lying? Ask them for the facts. Ask them to present facts. And if they can't present the facts, then what are they talking about? Because all of us here, the four fellows that are here on your screen, we're about facts.
Yeah.
We're not about making stuff up. We're fact-driven people. That's what we did. We were looking for, when we work on the street, we look for the facts.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's my thing. I would not stop protests. I think they're healthy for a democracy. I think we need them in our democracy. And by God, I was willing to lay down my life so people in this country can protest. That's how firmly I believe in it.
And it is a constitutional right, the right to assemble, the right to protest and raise your voice, and to collect as a people to raise your issue. That's in our Constitution. So it's, you have every right to do that. You're crossing the line with the looting and the vandalism.
Right.
And
that's where that breaks. That's where
right.
it apply.
That is not constitutional. What's that last question, Duran?
No,
Mark, we're gonna have Mark get the last question. This one is directed to Rich. Rich is. I believe Rich is gonna just rip into this one.
In 60 seconds.
Oh, Rich.
Rich, why do police need to stand there and take people screaming in their face? Would we be able to get away with doing that with the city council and mayor?
No.
Oh, well, the answer to that is real simple. The police department is a paramilitary organization, and we follow orders. I can assure you there's not one police officer given the right to prevent that wouldn't. The only reason why you're allowed to do it is because the powers to be make us sit there and take it, and it's not right. And that needs to be adjusted. What was the second part of that?
It said, will we be able to get away with doing that to the city council or the mayor, just screaming or yelling in their face?
No. And when they thought it was going to get violent, they'd be the very first ones to ask the police officers to intervene on it. But when it's going towards the cops, we need to sit there and take it. I mean, you're talking about our council who wants to get rid of the police but hired private security for $152,000 so they felt safe, but they don't want the community that they supposedly live in and want them feeling safe. And majority of the minorities in our community feel safe with police. I think people need to seriously look at that. And if that wasn't hypocritical, I don't know what is. But no, they wouldn't be. And as soon as they felt threatened, the first thing they want to do is call the cops. Look at the rioters. They stand to block the streets. They jump in the front. And if somebody gets ran over, the first thing they do is call the cops.
Yeah.
So, and to touch on it real quick, you find out they're lying by finding out the results and holding them accountable to it. Because everybody had Hillary Clinton winning in a landslide. They had you believe it, except for the people who know better. And the facts came out.
My man. Rich. Okay, then Mark, you get the final question.
All right,
So
let's hear it.
this is from CA.
Oh yeah.
Why does Black Lives Matter get to shut down our highways? Would you let me stand in the middle of 94 and shut down traffic?
The answer is no. I'm too worried about your safety. I would not let you stand in the middle of 94. I would haul you off the highway. Why? Because weak politicians allow it to happen. That should never, ever happen. It should just never happen. Here's the reality, and if you even look at the riots, early on after the Floyd incident, you could see things ramping up in a hurry. Unfortunately, our governor and the mayors of Minneapolis and St. Paul went and hid trying to figure out what they needed to do to not make anybody mad versus let the police officers do their jobs. Now, I can tell you, certainly on our side of the river in St. Paul, we had the personnel to prevent any of that damage from occurring. Unfortunately, we didn't have anybody with enough courage, I'm going to use the word courage, to get our people together and let us do what we do. So if you'll notice, the one department that has been a little more aggressive than the others as it relates to the highway stuff is the state patrol. They typically won't put up with that if they don't have to. Unfortunately, the commissioner, they fall under the umbrella of the commissioner of public safety. And again, I'm not real impressed with his performance throughout all this either. So when it comes down to shutting down highways, it's all politics. And if you look at all the politicians who are in charge of these cities where this is occurring, and the overarching hierarchy, which is a Democratic governor, commissioner of public safety, who's a Democrat, and then the people that fall under their control, that's why. If our leaders could make decisions, trust me, we have the training and the resources within our state to deal with this stuff and never let it get to that point. But you need leadership that's willing to make decisions to not allow it to happen in the first place.
Wow.
Even as kids, you're taught not to stand in the street. I don't know why they do it as grown adults.
Exactly.
I never understood what shutting a freeway down does to further your cause at all.
Exactly. Counterintuitive, counterproductive.
That is a wrap. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Mark, Rich, Ed, and
My
Bob,
pleasure.
for your perspective. Thank you for being honest. Thank you for sharing your experiences with us and not holding back. Hopefully the viewers learned something. Hopefully they go away with a different perspective. Hopefully they will engage in conversations and not back down. Do not accept the narrative. Speak beyond your normal resources to seek the facts. Make sure to always take action. Just claim this is your country. It's your country. It's worth fighting for. So with that, you guys, we say thank you so much. We're getting a bunch of thank yous. You guys are getting a lot of thank yous, a lot of viewers out there. You guys are really popular. So
thank you for letting us tell the truth without editing.
Thank you guys. Thanks the four of you for making the show really popular today. So we appreciate
you guys vote for Bob when he runs, all right?
Yeah. I'll have you guys stay on beyond, but thanks, viewers.
Thank you. Thanks,
Bye, guys. Thanks.
Yeah, and Duran, I really appreciate that flag behind your head, my man.
Absolutely.
I do. And thanks for having us. Thanks for letting us tell the truth. Thanks for letting it really be out there. I mean, that takes courage in today's climate. So right. you guys need to give yourselves a hand for that as well. So,
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Stay on, everybody.